Good morning. We're all delighted to join you, all of you today, for the swearing in of the members of the President's Council on Physical Fitness in Sports. And I'm particularly pleased to be here with the two co-chairs, Florence Griffin Joyner, the fastest person in Washington, and Tom McMillan, who's probably the tallest person in Washington. I was actually taller before I took this job, now using. This is truly an administration that values physical fitness. Not only do we have a president who demonstrates that every day, but he's also keeping the Washington press corps in shape as they run after him during his daily jog. Let me tell you that we also have a vice president that keeps himself and all of us fit. Let me tell you a little about the council and why the work it does is so important. The council members advise both the president and me on how to get more Americans physically active and, as a result, healthier and more physically fit. That's a very important job. Exercise and physical fitness are not just ways to keep all of us looking good. They improve health and the quality of life as well. All of you here know that, but our message is apparently not getting through to everyone in this country. Only about 40% of Americans are really couch potatoes, and those physically inactive people are almost twice as likely to develop coronary heart disease as people who engage in regular physical activity. About 40% of America's boys and girls can't do one pull-up. And on the other hand, the girls that participate in sports are 90% less likely to get involved with drugs, 80% less likely to have an unwanted pregnancy, and 3 times more likely to graduate from high school. Physical fitness makes a difference in our behavior. We have all got to get into shape for the challenges of the 21st century, and this is doubly critical for our young people, for both boys and for girls. We're fortunate, of course, to have a president who understands this and demonstrates the value of daily exercise. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the nation's first fitness buff, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Secretary Shalala and Mr. Vice President, Florence Griffith Joyner and Tom McMillan, and glad to see others here in the audience, our Surgeon General, Dr. Elders, Assistant Secretary of HHS, Phil Lee, and so many others who are here. Let me say that I was once asked if I wanted Al Gore to be vice president because he could run faster than me and then I would get my times down. That was not the primary reason that I asked him to join the ticket in 1992, but I did think it was important, and I do believe it is important, that all of us exemplify by what we do a commitment to the work we are about to celebrate when we swear in the President's Council today. Let me explain why I think this is important. This morning before I came out here, I had about 10 minutes and I sat down and I made these little notes here to try to see if I could get across to you and perhaps through you to the American people why this day is really a big deal to me. Before I ran for president, I devoted a lot of time, very private time, to reflecting on the nature of public service, the nature of government, what the role of government in our life is, and what things government cannot do. And I thought a lot about what the American people have to do for themselves in order for this country to work right. So consider the following. Our government and our administration has worked hard here at home to get the economy up and going and the deficit down, to pass the most sweeping education and training legislation for workers and young people trying to compete in a global economy in 30 years, to expand trade more in 15 months than in the previous generation. Abroad, in the last couple of days, we have celebrated something that's good for our health. For the first time since the dawn of the atomic age, the United States and Russia no longer have nuclear missiles pointed at each other. An enormous amount of what we do involves the health of our people. In the area of the environment, we're working hard on a new Clean Air Act and a Safe Drinking Water Act. In the area of crime, we passed an assault weapons ban and the Brady Bill, and more police officers and more prevention, more opportunities for our young people to stay out of trouble. In the area of strengthening the family, something that directly relates to the health of American families, the Family and Medical Leave Act, which permits families to take time off when their children or their parents are ill. Our FDA is taking on a pretty tough fight with the tobacco industry and now looking into the whole issue of the narcotic or addictive effects and whether they can be varied based on certain production techniques. In the area of health care, the First Lady and the Department of Health and Human Services and others have worked on immunization, on more primary and preventive care in our health care proposal, on trying to provide prescription medicines to elderly people. Now, in the course of doing this, we made quite a few enemies. We've made the NRA mad, the cigarette industry mad, certain business interests that don't agree with either the economic program or the environmental initiatives or other things. Many, but not all, of the health insurance companies and some particularly extremist groups who disapprove even of what we've done to expand the frontiers of medical research. It has all been worth it. It is part of what we are supposed to do. Now, having said all that, when I picked up the briefing for this event and I realized that 43% of the adults in this country don't exercise, that 5 years ago, and the council sponsored a poll that said 42% of the American people were actively interested in pursuing a healthier lifestyle, which would mean more exercise and a better diet, and it's dropped now to 30%. When I see the number of children who live in our cities and are vulnerable to gangs and violence and drugs, and I realize that there are no public swimming pools in many of our cities available to them, that the basketball courts don't work anymore, that there are no longer baseball leagues for kids to play in the summertime. When I look at large employers who spend fabulous amounts of money on health care but very little on the wellness of their employees, I say to myself, I like fighting these fights. I don't mind making these enemies, but unless the American people do something to seize control of their own personal health care destiny and that of their families and that of their friends and neighbors and the kids who live in their cities and communities, we are not going to become what we ought to become. That is why this day is important to me and to the American people. So I say to the members of the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports, thank you. We will support you in every way we can. We hope your message will be heard loud and clear. I say to my fellow Americans, ask yourselves what you can do to improve your own health, the health of your communities, and the availability of sporting and teamwork activities to kids. When you play sports, you don't have time to do other things. When you're involved in teamwork, you learn how to deal with the disappointment of defeat and frustration. You even learn how to manage unfairness. These are important things, lessons in life that have to be learned. A government program cannot provide them. So we'll keep doing our job. Let's help them do their job. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, to the First Lady, Hillary Rodham Clinton, to Secretary Shalala, and to the members of the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports, and especially the co-chairs, Tom McMillan and Florence Griffith Joyner, to our Surgeon General, Joycelyn Elders and Dr. Phil Lee, and also may I acknowledge someone who was visiting the White House today and is attending this event, Dr. Joao Havelange, who is the leader of the organization sponsoring the World Cup competition, which is, of course, being held in the United States this year. We're delighted to have you here also, Dr. Havelange. and to Sandra Perlmutter, Executive Director of this council, and to all of the distinguished guests who are present. It is my job to swear in the members of the council, and then after swearing them in, I will ask the two co-chairs to come up to the podium and make remarks. Let me say, first of all, that I listened carefully to what the President said about running times. But I want you all to put that in perspective by just watching the sections of the newspaper, like the Post has a style section, other papers have sections like that. Every once in a while, you will see little items about visiting VIPs who make the mistake of going for what they think will be a casual run with the President in the morning, and they're not fully prepared for the for the experience. Is there one of your victims here in the? Oh, I forgot that one of his victims was here. But every once in a while, you'll see something like this happen, because he's one of these runners that starts off at a normal pace. And what do you call it, Florence? Negative splits. The runners that get faster as they go along. By the time he is on his last couple of miles, he is really barreling down there. Anyway, I hope that it does help to have a President of the United States and a Vice President and an administration full of people who are not only aware of the importance of physical fitness, but actively participate on a daily basis. May I also say that as a parent, I was watching Calvin Hill cheer on his son Grant in that NCAA championship, and I was really moved, because a lot of us here have had the opportunity, as the President and the First Lady have, of cheering on their children in these sporting events, and how many times my wife Tipper and I have commented on the fact that it's just a great blessing for our country that now young girls as well as young boys are given the opportunity to participate fully in competitive sports. They always had the opportunity, but not to the extent that is available now, and it really is a great blessing. And as far back as the ancient Greeks, Aristotle wrote about the connection between a sound body and a sound mind, and what the President said about the health of our nation being tied to the willingness of Americans to be involved in physical fitness and sports is so true. So this is not an occasion that any of us take lightly. It is an extremely important occasion, and I would like now to ask the members of the President's Council to stand. Elizabeth Arendt, Jeff Blatnick, Ralph Boston, my fellow Tennessean, Don Casey, Rockne Freitas, Kevin Saunders, Veronica Goldberg, Calvin Hill, James Huga, Judith Kiefer, Deborah Larkin, Ira Leesfield, Jack Mills, Amber Trafsky, and the two co-chairs I mentioned earlier, Florence Griffith Joyner and Tom McMillan. I might say that Zena Garrison Jackson, a member of the council, is competing in the French Open today and is not here for that reason. Will be sworn in at a later occasion. If you would raise your right hands and repeat after me, beginning with I, state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter. So help me God. Congratulations. I'd like to ask the two co-chairs now to come up and say a few words.
Let me take these off so you don't.
Mr. President and Vice President Gore, thank you for hosting a very important ceremony. We really appreciate this. What a wonderful culmination of our activities for May, National Physical Fitness and Sports Month. Your personal interests and that of the First Lady, along with many of our presidential fitness partners with us today, speaks volumes about your support of this important campaign. When we talk about role models, we need not stop with athletes. Our nation has 4 individuals who personally espouse the benefits and joys of getting physically active and physically fit. President Clinton, the first jogger, is our most visible and persuasive advocate and representative. And I can honestly say that I don't think that's the most appropriate word as a jogger, because I had the opportunity to run with the president, and my husband did also. Unfortunately, Al wasn't able to maintain the president's pace and dropped out and took a ride in the motorcade back to the White House. And as we were jogging along, running along, about 200 meters before we got to the White House, the president just took off and left us. So he's in great shape. I get that question asked often, how great a shape is the president? I can only say that he's in great shape, and I appreciate all that he's doing every day. Vice President Gore, I can personally attest, is vigorous and energetic in no small measure because of his regular schedule of physical activity. The First Lady, Mrs. Hillary Rodham Clinton, has long been an advocate not only of eating healthy foods, but keeping healthy through walking and bicycling. And Mrs. Tipper Gore, herself a jogger, in the last year has taken the physical and mental health and fitness message to heart. All of us have sometimes mouthed the excuse that we're just too busy, that we don't have the time to exercise or be physically active. Well, if our busiest citizen, President Clinton, can make the time to run regularly and become physically active, then I know there are ways that each one of us can find the time and make the time. Compared to him, we have no excuses. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You need this.
Great. If we could swear in the council during May, which is National Fitness Month. Mrs. Clinton said, yes, I promise that will happen. So we are very grateful that this day has come. Mr. President, look at this council. Aren't they fighting shape? We pledge to you personally and to the nation that we are going to do everything we can to get this nation moving and moving again. We do recognize and greatly appreciate your personal commitment to the goal of getting and staying physically active, as physically fit. But beyond that, by virtue of your presence at this distinguished ceremony today, it's abundantly clear that you've made a solid commitment to the President's Council, to its mission, and to its goal of protecting and improving the health and well-being of all Americans. Our programs will reflect your priorities and your initiatives in healthcare reform, crime, education, welfare, and national service, because all those initiatives, recognizing that so many of our problems can be lessened if there are more opportunities for fitness and sports, and if individuals across this land take responsibility for their bodies. Not too many years ago, a little less than 25 years ago, another occupant of this great house, through his personal and official actions, placed the mission of the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports in the national consciousness. The energy and enthusiasm that President John F. Kennedy so obviously had for a vigorous game of touch football or a refreshing swim did truly capture the attention of the America and the world. President Kennedy was so inspired to suggest that the White House staff demonstrate their vigor and physical fitness by hiking 50 miles. And I might add, before him, President Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, had suggested to Marine officers and his own White House staff that they do the same. I'm sure, Mr. President, that your staff would relish such a challenge today. President Kennedy's enthusiasm for fitness energized countless Americans to become more physically active and more physically fit. And now, through your personal example and your leadership as president, today we can re-energize the President's Council and reestablish the central role of physical activity in this important national dialogue. I thank you very much and look forward to working with you. Thank you. Thank you.